Hello, I'm Paul Louis Metzger, the director of the Institute for Cultural Engagement, New Wine, New Wineskins, and this is an interview with New Wine Tastings. It's my privilege to introduce to you Abbot Gyokuko Carlson, actually Abbot Emeritus at Dharma Rain Zen Center in Portland, Oregon. Gyokuko Carlson and her late husband, Abbot Kyogen Carlson, were the founding abbots of Dharma Rain Zen Center. And it's such a privilege to welcome my friend as one of our presenters, our conference speakers on the plenary panel for Religious Liberties for All. And so we've been friends for many years, going all the way back to 2005, partnering through Dharma Rain and New Wine, New Wineskins with monthly potlucks, dialogue potlucks that started up at Dharma Rain in the Hawthorne district when you were still in Hawthorne back in around 2005. So we've been dealing with religious liberties for all for a very long time, I think, at least
True.
between our two traditions. So Gyokuko, having introduced you, feel free to share a little bit more about yourself and Dharma Rain Zen Center in Portland, and then I'm going to ask you about the conference.
So our temple has grown. It started very, very small in a small rental house, but we find that Zen has a particular appeal, I would say, to a lot of people who are disaffected from religious life, but still yearning. And so our temple has grown considerably over the years, and we have put emphasis on building community, on building kindness, mindfulness, and ethical responsibility into the lives of our parishioners.
Thank you, Gyokuko. And why does this conference, Religious Liberty for All, not just for some, but for all, why does this conference that New Wine, New Wineskins is putting on and that you're participating in so important to you?
Well, I'm very conscious of how deeply personal our religious practices, our religious lives are to us. It's as sensitive and deeply personal as our love lives and our family life. And it's very important to me that my religious life not be interfered with. And so I want to extend that to respecting others and their choices. I was raised a Christian, and there came a point where I couldn't do it anymore. And it was deeply hurtful to my mother at that time. And I understood and was sympathetic with her pain, and yet my life had to go in the direction that it went. When I give an interview with someone who is thinking about converting to Zen Buddhism, part of my shtick is I tell people everyone actually has a native spiritual language. There's a way in which deep truths can be expressed and heard by you. And some of us, unfortunately, weren't born into a family that spoke that language, weren't born into a church community that spoke that language. When you find that community that does speak that language, it has the sensation of coming home. And it's really important that when you have found your home, you not be dislodged from it by external forces. So I think it's always possible to misuse the freedom to choose, but it's also important that a a deep connection be respected.
Thank you very much indeed. What themes come to your mind when you think of religious liberties in our multi-faith, pluralistic American context today? And we'll be engaging this at the conference, even on the panel. What are some of those pressing issues in your mind, in addition to what you've already shared?
Well, one of the things that comes to mind is, I think, wherever we make our opinions known or we make connections, it's also possible to then close our minds to anything else. And I think that's a trap. I think there are lots of traps in not just our religious life, but our political life, our social life. There are lots of traps, but one of the traps, I think, is a subtle form of bigotry. And I think that we see that played out in the political landscape, and we see it played out in religious intolerance or racial intolerance. And I think we have a pluralistic society that can leave us feeling doubtful or afraid in our own decision making, our own connection, and want to protect and defend our own positions that may be overreaction, or it may just be ill-advised, but it's one of the traps that we fall into. Another one on the other end of the spectrum is just complacency. Especially if we happen to be in a majority situation. But it's also a trap.
So either the matter of being too defensive or being defensive or being complacent.
Yeah.
And those are certainly two dynamics that work in our society and in our respective traditions at various points, and especially the latter one. You know, if one is in the dominant tradition, I'm a part of the Christian tradition, which could be seen as a dominant tradition, even though many Christians feel like we're being persecuted today. I mean, many in my community feel that way in our society. We might be complacent in the sense of not ensuring liberties for others, as one way in which I take up your point about complacence, that I need to be mindful about caring for the liberties of others, even when we feel like we need to be defensive. So sometimes we get defensive, and that's it's a challenge. We can go both ways in the Christian community. You've already, in a sense, gotten into this, I think, because you know, one of the things I so value about our potlucks is our sharing from our traditions, and you're sharing deeply from your tradition, even when you're thinking about these traps, and always being aware of traps. I've heard that many times, that we need to be very mindful and not fall into traps. And how does your Zen tradition, Gyokuko, Abbot Carlson, how does your Zen tradition help you navigate this theme of religious liberties for all, in addition to what you've already shared about avoiding the traps?
Well, I think one of the ways that our tradition, our practices help with this is we know that we are going to fall into traps, and it's just a given that we try to avoid, but we will fall into traps. And so mindfulness as a practice of being aware, not just what's going on around you, but what's happening inside. Where am I tensing? Where am I being reactive? And allowing that to be, while at the same time trying to work to minimize it and certainly avoid acting it out in public, but also working to let go of the tension and the reactivity that is there. But just on a philosophical point, we have a teaching, and this is old Buddhism. This predates the division into some of the sects that we have, but a really old teaching of Buddhism is called the net of Indra. And in this teaching, the whole universe is the net of Indra, and every place in this fisherman's net that's spread everywhere across the universe, there's a knot where the ropes interact, and in every knot there is a jewel, and every jewel reflects every other jewel in the net. And there is something joyful about the idea that I am a jewel and I contain a universe. I contain the whole of the universe. And if I can come back to that philosophical point in my head, there's a chance for my heart to open up to the jewel that is you. Even if you're wearing a turban and I'm wearing, a Coptic robe, it's like we can meet on that essential level.
Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing you share at the conference in the plenary panel session. And I think that theme of mindfulness and then also that metaphor that you just developed are very poignant and helpful to us in practical and in philosophical ways. If you were to look forward with the conference in mind, what are your hopes in closing? What are your hopes or hope that this conference can help achieve as we all partner together in this fisherman's net?
Well, one of the things that I would hope for is, it's kind of sad to me that so much of the information that we get is in headlines and sound bites, and that can be truly hurtful. And if some people coming to this conference or even just hearing about it stop and look a little deeper into where the others, whoever the others are, where they happen to be coming from, are, not all Muslims are scary jihadists. Not all people of any one religion are as bad as their worst examples. And every religion that I know of has at its heart the deep desire to help people connect with what is deeply true. And if we can pull that nugget out of somebody else's religious path, then we've expanded ourselves.
Well, thank you, Gyokuko. I have been expanded innumerable times in many, many, many ways through our interaction, and I am looking forward once again to collaborating with you and Dharma Rain Zen Center at this conference, Religious Liberty for All, and plural, singular, both and just to have this opportunity to connect with you today is just a real privilege for me. Thank you very much. This is Abbot Gyokuko Carlson, Abbot Emeritus at Dharma Rain Zen Center. And Abbot Carlson will be one of our plenary panelists for Religious Liberty for All for New Wine, New Wineskins. And this is Paul Louis Metzger, the director of New Wine, signing off with Abbot Carlson today. Thank you very much for joining us as we prepare for Religious Liberty for All, Saturday, March 14th here in Portland at Multnomah University.